Welcome everyone to Product Talk series by Pragmatic Leaders. Glad to see you all here. So before we start today's session, I would like to give you all a little brief about Pragmatic Leaders. At Pragmatic Leaders, you all are a part of global family of aspirational professionals who proactively help each other and are invested in each other's career growth. So, Pragmatic Leaders like your full stack global career accelerator that rests on three core pillars. Our first pillar is educate. We help you upskill via our proven courses and professional industry coaches. Pillar 2 is engage. We run a global community of product managers on Slack with access to online and offline meetups. I'll share the link of the community in chat section. After the session, you all can join our Slack community. And pillar 3 is employ. We operate a job platform dedicated for interview preparations to help you crack your dream job. Welcome and thank you, Ujjaini, for joining us today. I'm sure everyone is super excited for the session. I would like you to take the session forward from here.
Thanks, Piyush. Just a little about me before I begin. So I am a senior experience designer and a lead at EY's Digital Innovation Lab, which is a part of EY's CGP that's called the Connected Growth Platform, which is a larger digital innovation group within EY. And have been with them for over 2 years now. I have worked with clients like Comcast, Xfinity, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, JP Morgan Chase. I have also created some of their internal products like EY Comply, which is a compliance model for asset and wealth management companies, GTB, which is a global tax platform for some of the leading global enterprises. During this time, I've also built consumer-facing platforms as well as complex data-intensive dashboards, business process management tools, workflows, messaging platforms for collaboration. In the past, I have also worked with Thomson Reuters, where I helped them create a collaboration platform for their 20,000 employees, managing $12.6 billion worth of business. And that helped them manage and grow their diverse client portfolio. My background is in advertising, and I have partnered with a wide range of clients at that time, like Unilever, Diageo, 21st Century Fox, so on, and also some of the leading Indian clients like ITC, and help them build end-to-end product innovation and digital experiences. So that's a bit about me. Now I think we can get started with our presentation. So today I am talking about how to get from ideation to an MVP. So now, as I get started, first thing first, what is an MVP? MVP is minimum viable product. Minimum is an app that helps you find restaurants, is minimum, that has no specific features, doesn't know who the users are, doesn't know anything about it. It's minimum. It's a crappy product, and it's not going to get you any funding. What is viable? When you know what you're building. You're building an app where users can come look for restaurants in the location where they are based. They can look for a particular cuisine. So if let's say Tom is in Flatiron District in New York and is looking for Lebanese food, and a restaurant that serves Lebanese food and has the highest rating is a great viable product. So that is how we get to our great product with features that you really want to test with your users. So the feature is in the core of this MVP. Now, if you ask why is MVP needed, why do you need to really do that? There are a lot of reasons. I think the biggest reason is you want to minimize your expenditure, because these mistakes can be very, very expensive. You do not want to make a product that is not going to, that the customers do not really want, that the customers had no need for, and you launched it and you had no idea where it's going, you don't have a direction, and you're basically redoing it constantly. and that's expensive. Also, you want to build relationship with your customers. You want this customer to be attracted. You want to make them aware, and then you want to retain them, and then you want them to come back to you again and again and increase that loyalty. And you need to understand your customers for that. Then you also need to bring focus on the core value proposition. What are you building? What is this product? This product that helps you find the restaurant that you are really looking for in your location, which is highly rated. That's how you're looking for. That is the core value proposition. Some great examples of some great products with MVP. Facebook, we all know. All Facebooks, or the Facebook as it was called when they launched, MVP did was to connect students together via their college or class and let them post messages to their boards. The idea already existed in Friends Reunited and other social platforms, but the simplicity of Facebook's approach and the traction it gained in the virulent world of college graduates proved unstoppable. So this allowed almost all the features that came after to build on that success. So the core Facebook has always been same. Everything that's created after that was built afterwards. Similarly with Groupon, vouchers and discounts are very old concepts. They are not new. But Groupon took that idea of sharing and socializing them to new heights. It launched with a simple WordPress site and regular PDF emails to early subscribers, and the test proved successful. And the company then built on this value and its voucher system and the backend, and it drove to great success after that. Similarly, we can also talk about Amazon. Amazon started off by selling books online, challenging Barnes and Nobles, who was the leader at that point of this world, where largely stuck with the brick and mortar age, focusing on books at a low prices angle in '94 with a simplistic web design. It was all it took for a company to grow. It understood what it was selling. So on. So I can talk about all these brands, and so basically the fundamental of all these products, the basic thing that they're selling is what their MVP is. And that never really changes over a period of time. Now, you would ask, how do we get there? Great. What's the roadmap? So there are different ways. Now, my craft is in UX designing, and I'm obviously going to speak from that perspective. And I'm going to start with the design thinking process. There are several design thinking processes in the market. There is IDEO, which says that do ideation, come up with an idea, take inspiration, and then you implement. These are just the 3 core activities. There's a lot that goes into it. Stanford design thinking says that they have the beehive method, beehive model, where you empathize with the users, then you define the problem, then you start ideating, and then you create the design and the prototype, and then you go on to testing this model. One of the most common, and I would also call it the simpler model of design process is double diamond design thinking. Again, you start with discovery, where you're discovering your users, define it, develop, and deliver, and then you keep evolving, which again becomes a very agile process. I'll also come to that. IBM Design Thinking does the loop. They think that it is a never-ending process of discovery and creation and then iteration. The yellow dot over there is a focus on user outcomes. So when using IBM Design Thinking, it definitely puts user first. And that, I feel, it is with every design thinking, it is with every model that you're creating, every project that you're working on. User has to come first. You're building a product for your user, and you have to know what they really want, what really motivates them, what are their pain points. They have to be in the core of all this thing. Then of course, then you're reflecting on all this understanding that you have got on the product, the user, the market research. And that's where the multidisciplinary team comes in. And then the rest is innovation. You're constantly, now you're creating, you're learning, you're going back to your user even at the end. So when you start, you go to your user. When you end, you go to your user and see how this is performing. And you create prototypes, you listen, watch, learn, and then you course correct, and you go back at it. And it's very important in this process, though I know in the beginning I spoke about mistakes can be expensive, but at the same time, it is important to make mistakes. I know I am contradicting myself, but I think that's where it's very important to understand what kind of mistakes are you making. It's very important to follow this process so that when you're making a mistake, it's an informed mistake and you know how to course correct yourself, because then you have this guideline. So these are basically the 4 aspects of this whole design thinking process. From all the models that we are going to see, from everything that we're going to see, it basically falls in 4 categories. First is research. Research will be, if it's an existing product, understanding the product completely. If it's not an existing product, then what is it that you're creating? Second part of this research is understanding the market. Are there direct competitors? Are there indirect competitors? What are they doing? What kind of features have they developed? And why have they created those features? And the third part of this aspect is understanding the user. Like I said, I cannot emphasize this enough, the importance of understanding the users' needs, pain points, and motivations. And once we have all this information, we move on to starting to synthesizing this, whatever we have understood. We put everything, we dump everything on a whiteboard or a paper or whatever we feel fit. And we try to make sense of what we understood. There are multiple things that goes into synthesizing. There are personas, user journeys, and so on. But if you ask me, the first thing first is the features. That's what goes into the synthesizing. When you have done your research, you know what are the things that the user really needs. And on the basis of that, you start working on your features. That comes from the summary. Now, once you have these features ready, and this is again becomes a very collaborative team activity, prioritizing features. You work very closely with your product managers, you work very closely with your developers, and you start synthesizing these feature lists and start prioritizing. You're not going to, if you have figured out that you have 15 features that needs to be developed, you're not going to develop all 15 of them on day 1. You need to break them up. You need to prioritize. So there are again different models. Moscow is a very common one. But I think my favorite, I've not included that over here, but one of my favorite frameworks, and there are multiple frameworks in the market. One of my favorite is RISE. RISE is, so reach, impact, confidence, and effort. I particularly like RISE because I feel it really helps one understand how to prioritize these features. Reach is basically, and you can actually find this online. So you basically put your features down and you start rating them in terms of RICE. In terms of reach, it's very, you basically figure out how many of these customers is it going to reach. And that again is informed by your user testing. In terms of impact, is it really going to impact these users? In terms of confidence, how confident are you feeling as a designer or as a team? And effort is mostly about the person who's developing either the prototype, in terms of effort, it's basically who's developing the demo or the prototype, and how much effort is it going to take. So there are various such frameworks, but research prioritization, feature prioritization is one of the main things. That really helps you decide the cycle that you should go through. Then comes design. Designing is where you have all this information And this is where the product manager really goes into the user story phase of the whole process. That is a piece that the product manager owns. What the UX designer does in this case is start developing, start creating these wireframes that will go into the prototype. So the user story and user journeys are again different things. The reason is that also the reason why you develop a user story in this phase is because user journey is a bit more generic. It's about the product as a whole. User story belongs to one feature only, and they are all called epics. I'm not getting deeper into that because, like I said, I'm an UX designer. I don't want to dive deep into another person's craft, but what happens is user stories are epics. So they belong to each feature. So if we are talking about feature X, how does one person start to end on one feature of one whole product? So that is what goes to the developer as well. So that's the reason why that needs to be developed when the wireframes are being developed, and they need to happen parallelly. Once the wireframes are done, once all the stakeholders are on board, they go in for prototyping. And that's all part of design and somewhere in between designing and testing. And then you really go to the market and you ask people, what do you think about this product? So I'll get more into that, but how do you really manage this whole process? Because like I said, the feature prioritization is really a very key part of it, because from feature to this prototype stage is what is key. So there are different methodologies. There is KanBan, which is becoming very, very popular. KanBan, or known as the signboard or billboard in Japanese, is a scheduling system for lean manufacturing and just-in-time manufacturing. Taiichi Ono, an industrial engineer at Toyota, developed KanBan to improve manufacturing efficiency. So KanBan is a very, very simple method. There's an ice box of all the features. The reason I emphasize on features because that's how features get segregated over here. Features go into ice boxes that can be developed later. Then there's backlog, which also gets developed later, but they are in the queue, they're in the pipeline. Ready is what is ready to get into production. In progress is what is being produced right now. And when I say production, it's basically getting developed. And finally, the one which are done are very simple to understand. Then there's Agile, very popular. I think I work mostly on Agile and methodologies on most of my projects. Agile is extremely effective, I feel, because it has a constant iterative process, but at the same time, it has the steps. It has the waterfallish steps one after another. It's not random. But at the same time, it always takes you back to the loop. It's very good for a collaborative effort. So you start with planning, you get into designing, you develop something, you test it, you release it, take the feedback, start planning again, and it goes on in that cycle. Then there's Lean. Lean is a sort of Agile. I'm again not going to dive very deep into Lean because it's getting very popular these days. And Lean is becoming a subject in itself. Lean also requires a certain amount of expertise in terms of knowing that this is a good time to use Lean. Because Lean is used sometimes when the decision to use the technology is what you're trying to do, or you have limited budget, or you're dealing with the development of, so it's very specific to one particular concern or a piece of a project management. Then there's Waterfall. Waterfall is very, very commonly known. Waterfall has basically starts from one point to release and maintenance. Now it has happened, like on one of my projects, when I started, we worked on an Agile methodology. We did the whole circle 3 times because it went in 3 cycles. And then I handed over the product to the development team, and now it's in a waterfall. So it's possible that sometimes projects get into multiple project management methodologies. So once you have done all this, once you have already, so when you're starting with an ideation, you have this idea and you're like, you don't know what to do next. You start with your research methodology. You start with starting to understand the problem, the product that you're creating, your users. You have all the data. You start getting into creating user journeys, personas, and everything. And then you start creating the designs. You get into creating a prototype. So now what? Now you have come to that point and you have used the methodology that worked best for you, depending on what stage your product is in. Sometimes it's a new product, and that is very different from a product that's just developing one big feature. So both are both will have very different methodologies in terms of project management or the design thinking process that's used. I think it's always a good idea to be flexible in terms of that. Now, once you've created it, how do you know you created a good product? So yes, of course, there's user testing and there's usability testing. Now, the difference between user testing and usability testing is user testing needs to be done right in the beginning of a project. When you come up with this one bright idea, you need to talk to your users and say that, what do you think of this idea? So that is very different from you have already created a prototype and you're going to use it, like, what do you think of this product? That's the difference. That's the key difference between these two. Now, when you're doing that, so this is one model. There are again multiple models. It depends on what part of your project you are, what kind of project you're working on. This is an overall success criteria: empathy, stickiness, virality, revenue, scale. Is it scalable? In some cases, it can also be the task success. So when you have developed this prototype and you're just testing one feature, you go to your user and you say that, you know what, let's say this is a shopping app and you need to buy so-and-so you need to buy this kid's dress from this link and you need to complete this transaction. If the user is able to do that without asking you a single question, that's known as task success. So that's one criteria. Second is, while doing that task, how many errors would the user make? Is the user able to get from point A to point Z? If not, if the user is stopping, every point that the user stops and makes an error, it has to be counted. Third is how much time the user is taking. So this is, so I'm actually diving, because I'm now starting to talk from my some of my own experiences, and I'm diving slightly deeper into this. How much time is this user taking? If the product existed before and now it's a newer product, you have made some changes from the last time, how do you measure the improvement? Is the user able to do it much faster? And then you also find out whether the user likes the product. You basically ask the user, do you like this product? What do you feel about it? Are you feeling good? What are you doing? So you're also doing a little bit of a user test. So there are these multiple platforms. There's a whole lot of measurement. You compare, and there's a lot of data on that. If you really want to dive deeper, the AC Nielsen's website has whole information on that. But overall, there's empathy, stickiness, virality, revenue, and scale. Now, it also depends on what are you developing. I'm also going to share this presentation with you, so you'll have this chart with you. But let's say if you are an e-commerce company, and first of it is empathy. So when I'm saying empathy, when you are showing this product, you're also talking to your user. and you're asking, what do you think? What are you feeling? Do you think it's a great product? This is something you're also doing in the beginning. So you're also doing a comparison between what the user said the need was and now how is the user is responding to that, if this is an answer to that need. Um, Stickiness is loyalty conversion. If somebody shop, think of an example, Sephora has a great loyalty program. Um, and people keep going back to Sephora to buy, I don't know, skincare, makeup, and all those things. Why do they do that? Is it just because it has great loyalty? No. But loyalty adds to this, right? Because they like the fact that it's easy to search on Sephora. They like the fact that most of the things that they're looking for, they find on Sephora, most of the answers. But at the same time, they also like the fact that they're also getting these loyalty reward points, and they're able to use that to buy more, and they're becoming more and more loyal customers. So that's definitely higher conversion. Sephora has some of the highest customer retention in the world. Then there's virality. There's customer acquisition cost. That's what CAC is. There's reactivations. How many people are reactivating their account? What exactly was the customer acquisition cost? And that's a combination of, again, a whole lot of components. The cost. So the cost that was, if I have a marketing cost, or there are multiple costs involved in this, or development cost, when I divide it by the number of customers acquired, what is my cost per customer that I have acquired? Then the revenue, the transaction, of course, how much money you're making. And then there's CLC, that is the customer life cycle. And finally, there is scale. Are influencers, are you able to connect with influencers? Are influencers able to throw back their audiences back to you? So those are some of the things. So similarly, so all these other categories, they have their own listings, and I'm going to share this chart with you. So that's pretty much how do you get from ideation to a point of MVP, creating that right MVP. And this is a constant journey of iteration. Like I said, you have to make mistakes. I mean, how else, who knows that what a perfect product is? I don't think Amazon knew on day one. Amazon is definitely not the way it started on day one. Facebook isn't. So it has all evolved from making mistakes. But at the same time, it's very important to follow these processes, these frameworks. They have come from people who have made mistakes, and it's very important to use these methods and learn from them, and to use this knowledge bank that exists. So that's I think we have come to the end of this presentation. I'm open to answering any questions if I can. Thank you. Thanks for attention.
So meanwhile, people are putting up questions. So I already have few of the questions listed from people. We can start with them.
Okay.
So first question is how to make decisions as how much input should be given in MVP in terms of design and development.
So it really depends on, so this is a constant process of learning, right? Because that's the reason I spoke about the methodologies. And when you're starting from the research and you're moving on to your designing, and every step is going to be guided by what you have just learned. And that's how, so that's, you'll know how much effort to put in as you go in from one stage to another. So it's very difficult to define right now and say that, okay, for this project you need this much. It really depends on where you're at and what you're designing and what you have really learned from this process. It's a great question, by the way. I'm going to write it down.
So another question is, what are the few things someone should learn or know about if he or she wants to make a career switch to product management?
So it's interesting. So, for example, product designing came into being in 96. And I have come across a lot of people who say they have 35, 40 years of experience. What is important here is understanding what experience of yours is relevant. Now, depending on whether you're just starting out or you have some existing experience. Sometimes if you have some kind of background experience in the industry that you're getting into, whether it's product management or product designing, let's say product management, that becomes important. Um, in terms of learning all these methodologies, there are lots of courses. There are tons of courses. Udemy has courses. General Assembly has courses. There are lots of courses in the market, and there are lots of books in the market. I can probably send across a list of some great books. And there's no lack of learning material. You can read all these, you can learn all these things. I once did a course from General Assembly, and what they literally taught me was something I actually already knew, though I was not from product designing. I came from advertising, and they were somewhat following the same methodology. It wasn't very different. What I learned later was from experience, and I think the most important part is to get your foot in the door, and that's going to drive your experience. For that, again, it's again a chicken and egg process. Sometimes for that experience, they want that qualification. So if you can get your foot in the door, you're home.
Uh, so we have another question from the audience. So Piyush is asking how to keep up with business in terms of sales while product is being developed.
The keep up. Sorry, what do you mean?
How to keep up business in terms of sales while product is being developed. He want to add to the point, cannot stop sales and selling, but we know the product is not ready.
Yeah, of course. You will not stop selling. You would continue selling. What you're doing is you're updating it once you have the new information. Um, and there's nothing wrong in that. That's happening all the time. Products get updated all the time. iPhone keeps sending updates, software updates all the time. It's not that they have stopped selling iPhones. Um, Development has got nothing to do with sales. Sales will not stop. Sales will always keep going on. You cannot just put everything to halt and say that, okay, now we're developing this new version, and you know what I mean. So sales will keep going on. What you're doing is you're telling people that now we are launching something even better than what you were using.
Hope this answers, Piyush. Next question is from Neeraj. But the product is not ready, then what we are selling here? Uh,
So, okay. So first thing first, depends on what phase you're in. Uh, like I said, that the whole process will depend on where you are in the process. If you're somebody who has just come up with this great idea, you need to develop your product. Obviously, you don't have a product. But if you already have a product and you're developing a new feature, and the feature has come to you as an idea, then of course, you already have a product which is being sold, and then you're basically improvising it. So it really depends on where exactly you are in the process. I don't know if that answers your question.
yeah. Next question we have from KK. He's saying you mentioned of Sephora. What do you think or believe is working for Sephora so much so that you mentioned about it virality?
So Sephora has great engagement uh, because first of all, it's a great platform. It's very easy to navigate in that platform. After that comes the retention part. So once you're on Sephora, you're like, okay, this is a great platform, and it's very easy to navigate around, then you want to stick around. Why do you want to stick around? Because you're constantly creating engagement. There are constant engagements like there are these events that's constantly going on, or there are these makeup classes that you can go for. Of course, the market is very specific, and I'm talking about only Sephora audiences. But you can go for these makeup classes, and then you have these reward programs, right? They give you reward programs, and you come into these different categories of VIP Rouge, and I don't know what the third category is. I think there are three categories. And if you're a VIP Rouge, they actually let you go for their makeup sessions free. You can walk into a Sephora store and get your makeup done free, like great makeup done free. So those are some great engagements. Not many people will not even do it, but just to know that, oh, if I am a VIP Rouge, I can get this done, and that's a great thing to know. I know people who got it done for their big events in life for free.
Right.
So they have great engagement.
Next, we have a question from Melvi. How would you build success metrics into the product?
So what do you mean by that?
Uh,
How would you
Melvi,
measure success metrics?
yeah, meanwhile she elaborates, we can move to the next question. Uh, so we can continue with the question. Melvi is saying how to understand that your product is doing well.
Right, right. So that's why I shared that last slide. It all depends on what is your category, what kind of product, what stage are you at. You'll find a lot of frameworks online, but what you really need to know is when a customer is using your product, is the customer comfortable? When you say comfortable, it's a very big term, but is the customer able to, if we are just talking about a feature, is the customer able to complete the whole action flawlessly? And if the customer is making a mistake, he should be allowed to do that. Then what are your options to help out? Have you figured those out? So these are some very generic terms. It's very difficult for me to get specific on this one because I spoke about one of the examples where I was talking about task success, the number of errors, overall likability, and so on. But it's very difficult for me to get specific because it completely differs from one product to another product. But these are like general guidelines. If you look at the chart I shared, that's like the general guideline. You can just look at those parameters and see how you're doing in those areas.
Next, we have a question from Sachin. What would you prefer for the first MVP, a web app or a mobile app? What all factors you consider to choose one among the two?
I may not choose any, or I don't know. I don't have any preferences. Like my personal preference, I mean, it really depends on the product. I don't think I would choose either or choose one because they are both going to be two very, very different kind of products. And a mobile and desktop is not an MVP. They are two devices. MVP would be the product that you're building. I gave the example of a food app where you're looking for a restaurant. That is the app. So it is available on two different devices. So mobile and desktop is not the criteria really over here. So
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So next question is, can you share some insight on MVP for B2B product?
Sure. So I can share one of my examples, one of the enterprise products that I worked on, without giving too many details, or I'll get into some NDA situation. But so there's this product that we were building, and it was a B2B product. It was basically a compliance model for other financial institutions. And the minimum viable product over here was for a business analyst to be able to take the product through a journey, for it to go through a funnel, to go through a compliance uh, criteria and success of that. I don't know if I'm being clear right now. It was a very difficult model, but this is what came to my mind. Um, so that was the MVP. And I built a lot of things around it. I built a chat platform in that. I built a lot of other things in that. But that was the MVP. This this business analyst to be able to put the task through this funnel, to go through the compliance and meet the compliance criteria, and for it to say that yes, it meets or it doesn't meet, and then of course the steps that goes after it. There were other features that supported it, but this was an MVP for the product.
Yeah. Next, we have a question from Vikrant. If someone wants to become a UI UX expert, being into the product management, does it need to learn coding or any language for the same?
Learning anything is always great. It's always going to help. Yeah, why not? But what I have seen, which I did not think is the case earlier, and what I learned after getting into UX designing is what they really look for is some design experience, like learning Sketch, being able to do wireframes. All these other aspects are great, uh, but if you have some design experience, and I'm talking about product designers, I'm not talking about product management. That's a different ballgame altogether. But for product designers, some experience in designing is good.
And he has a follow-up question to it. How do you define empathy in one or two lines if you want to make them understand to a layman?
Empathy in one or two lines. I don't know if I'm that good with words, but I would say understanding your users' needs, motivations, and pain points is empathy, maybe.
Right. Next, we have a question from Mahesh. What are some key artifacts of a UX designer will produce?
Um, so this whole process belongs to an UX designer. The different design frameworks that I was talking about. What a designer makes in the end are probably the wireframes that goes to the developer, the prototype, which goes to, which is used for usability test, and also for the developer there are other things that goes in along with in the package. There are also these user journeys, personas are required for user stories, so that again becomes a part of the process. So I don't know at what point are you talking about a delivery. There's delivery in terms of the process, and there's a delivery in terms of the final output. So an UX designer delivers at a lot of different levels to get to that point.
Right. Uh, we had a follow-up question from KK regarding Sephora. He wants to ask, what do you think about how Sephora is developing in China? Some pros and cons.
In China,
Yeah, he has written a little context. It is building audience via social commerce via WeChat.
by WeChat, I am not following that story, so I don't know if I can comment on that. I don't
Right.
know how is, but from what I know, it's coming up really big, and WeChat is a great platform. I mean, you can't even get into China without WeChat, honestly, because it's where you can do transactions, you can do communication and a lot of things. So I mean, you can't get into China without WeChat.
So next we have a question from Kostab. Being a PM coming from coding background, how much of a material design language I must know? Could you please list down items with priority?
Material design, you're talking about Google material design. Um, it's good to know. I mean, honestly, so far, I've not even required material design. I've learned because I've been told by so many people that you need to know material design, and I've been like trying to gulp down as much as as possible from the website at some point, and I haven't stopped doing that. Material design is the future of designing. Um, it's very good to learn that, but what you really need is the fundamental of designing. Material designing is a way, it's a methodology in a sort, um, and it's very Android based. So it really depends on what market you're in. If you're a very high Android market person, then you need some material design guideline. In US, it's a very iOS market. Um, then there's more. There's not the need is not that high. So you can learn. It's great to learn. If you're in an Android market, then yes, it's great.
Next, we have a question from Neeraj. What's the scope of material design in case of web?
I think I just answered that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it really depends on what you're doing, and it's actually a design element. I mean, it's really a design element. There's no scope. It's a future. You need to know material design for future. It is coming up in a big way, and at one point there will only be material design. So I think it's great to learn it. Uh, not today. I don't think it's good to learn.
So next we have a question from AB. How would UX come into picture if we are building a middleware or API where there is no touch point like a web or mobile app?
UX comes into the picture everywhere because it doesn't matter what you're building. That's what I was just saying. That when someone asked about an MVP, it doesn't matter what device are you on. What when I was talking about the design thinking process, it did not mention the device anywhere. So it doesn't even matter whether it's a mobile, whether it's just the product that you're building. It can be anything. Even if you're building an Alexa, um, my Alexa would start right now. But even if you're building a voice device, you need UX designing. It's required for any kind of smart product. Does that
Right.
answer?
Yeah, I think we don't have any other question. We still have 5 more minutes. So if we have any other question, yeah. Nikhil has a question. Most startups don't include UX designers in early ideation and strategy phase of a product. What, according to you, is the best time to include participation of UX designer in important meetings?
That's a great question because it's really unfortunate that someone wrote Jab Paisa Ho. No, it's really unfortunate because I feel UX designers should be included right at the beginning of the process when you kickstart a product or when you have the idea. Because, like I said, the product manager, the project manager, or even the product manager and the UX designer and all these people, if the developers, I feel, should be included as soon as possible. Maybe you don't need a developer at an ideation stage when you're doing research, but actually I met a lot of people, some very, very upcoming startups getting into IPO stage who said that they are actually including the developers in the research stage. They want the developers to meet the users and understand how the users react. And so I would say it should be right in the beginning. Give them stocks if you don't have money, since somebody spoke about money, but give them stocks. And they should be right in the beginning. Did that answer your question?
And he has one more question. Would you recommend some UX models that PMs should be at least aware of?
yeah, it's very important for PMs to be aware of these design models. Double diamond is a very simple and very, very common model. It's there in the PDF that I just showed. Uh, because other models like the IBM's loop is very specific to IBM's way of thinking. There's nothing wrong in that, or even the IDEO's model, it's very specific to them. But double diamond is more generic. Those are basically the four fundamental stages that you have to follow, and that's actually a very good model.
Hi, Ujjaini, this is Vamsi. So I have one question. So, after you making an MVP, how do you reach different set of customers such that they will test your product? Because in the market there will be so many number of products, so customers may be not willing to even see your product. So how do you make such interest for them? And they should give you feedback as well.
Okay, so what you're talking about are two different things. Uh, what so if it's about reaching after the product is ready, uh, that is more of a marketing effort. That is something else, because then you're basically dealing with the competitors and all of those factors. When you're doing a usability test, those are not necessarily your customers, those are users. You find users that kind of fits your personality. Let's say that I keep coming back to my food app, but uh, if it's that food app, say your user is a 27 something working in Citibank, lives in Flatiron or Chelsea, that is your user. You're looking for users who fit uh, that criteria, and then you go and show your product and you do usability test. So that's different. They are not necessarily your customer. You might be introducing a product in the market, so you do not have a customer anyway. So those are your right users that you have identified. And in fact, it's a good practice that at the end of every usability test or user research, you're also thanking your customer. So you thank your customer with a small gift or with a small gift card. A very common practice is to give a Amazon gift card. Everybody gives Amazon gift cards. Um, so it really is that. So they are two different things. These users are basically doing a usability test. You're taking their feedback, and that feedback is going to help. So this is an investment that you're doing. This feedback is going to help build your product better or iron out the issues.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Any other questions?
I don't think there are any more questions. So thank you, Jenny, for conducting such insightful session for pragmatic leaders. And for those who don't know, Jenny has also conducted sessions with us in the past. And I'm sure everyone would have some concrete takeaways from the session. And yeah, we would love to have you once again. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for joining us. So you can reach out to Jenny in case of any queries, and you can also reach out to us in case you're looking for transition into product management, or you're looking for any other thing in the product management domain. You can anytime reach out to us. Also, we have some interesting webinars lined up for the upcoming months, so you can go and check out at our website. I'll share the link in description. And as mentioned in the start of session, we have our Slack community. So I'll share all the links in the description. So you can go and check all of them there. And yeah, thanks once again to Jenny for joining us. And thank you all.
And I'm really glad you invited me one more time and to be a part of this. I hope the information I shared was of help. I also shared the PDF with you, so please feel free to share it with anybody who's interested. And I love this session. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being so patient.